All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of How to Make Your Plant Look Awesome. In this episode, we are going to be looking at improving the quality of the viewport here so that we can get an idea of how our sun object is interacting with our model. So let's go ahead and get started with that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a plane plane object, and I'm going to just put it here, and I'm going to align it Alt A, and then I'm going to pick on that compass, XYZ, apply OK. All right, so you see how this isn't a big deal, but let's just look at it. See how this it's sort of in the middle of the lowest bar. Now I know that in real life, this plane object would be up in here somewhere, something like that. But we just want it to be at the lowest point, so we don't hide any of the model. And so to do that, I'm going to press Alt A again, and I'm going to select on an object at the lowest point. So this crossbar, for example, and I'm going to say, all right, on the Z here, I want the target object, which is that. I want its minimum, and I want the current object, its maximum. So I want the maximum of the plane, which means the highest point of the plane, to be aligned with the lowest point of whatever, the target. And that looks cool. Okay. Great. So now let's take a look at some viewport settings. Well, first in the viewport, many of the viewport views can be toggled on with shortcut keys. So for example, T for top will give you top, R will turn on scale, not right, but L will turn on left. If you want to toggle off the grid, you press G, and that will do that. Let's see, if you want to, let's say we were in top any of the plan view views, and you want to come down here to orbit. While you're in plan view, it's going to put you into orthographic mode, where you will never intersect the model, right? You'll never like get so close that you'll start going through it. And then if you want to get back to perspective mode, press P, and then you're back in that mode. And if you see me like orbiting around without clicking on the orbit tool, that's just because I'm holding Alt and middle mouse button, and then when you do that, you can orbit around. You can see that is the probably most effective way to rotate around your scene. And I failed to mention it earlier, it's just second nature for me. I mean, I try to live my life with that Alt middle mouse button. It only works when I'm sitting at the computer. All right, don't tell jokes, 9 o'clock in the morning, check. All right, so if you want to come over and see all the options that are available to you, whoops, come over here and just click on that perspective link button thing. And then we have all these options in here. We can go to orthographic, top, bottom, front, left, back, right. You can also go in and assign your own hotkeys to these if you like. And we have some other options here that we're not going to get into because they're not really in the basic tutorial version. All right, so then over here we have shaded, and this is shaded mode for the viewport, and this is sort of a balance between like a wireframe. If you press F3, you go to wireframe mode, and it shows, it'll show you if a mesh is bad, but not a whole lot else. It's not flat, but it's definitely not no shadows in here. So what we want to do is we want to see the shadows from our sun object. So I'm going to back out here, and you know what? I'm going to change this to like a gray, like a neutral gray color. All right, and then snap mode. No. All right, so I'll move that to the center, kind of. All right, so now if I come over here, click on shaded, and we have all these options: consistent colors, which is interesting, but you know, it sort of gives us some shading, but not very high quality. And then if we come down to edged faces, that's going to show you the wireframe on top of the mesh. You can also toggle that off with F4. Toggle that on and off like that. We have facets, which are going to show all the faceted objects. So that really doesn't apply to us, but if you like, you can see it. Don't worry about the terrible shadows. We're going to take care of that in a second. Hidden line, again, I think everybody knows what hidden line is. Wireframe, bounding box. If you have a very high dense mesh with lots and lots of polygons like we have, sometimes when you try to navigate around the viewport, it's going to look like this. It'll look terrible, and your frames per second will be like 0.2. So if you change to bounding box, it'll just show the box around your object, but not your object. Of course, it doesn't really give you any information, but it lets you navigate around the scene. All right, so then we have clay, which is pretty interesting. Not very applicable to us at the moment, but it looks pretty neat, and you get to see your model without textures distorting your view, or if there's a problem with the model, but the texture is sort of hiding that problem, then you'll be able to see it in this mode. Okay. All right. So stylize. So then these are kind of fun options to set your viewport to. If you want to go to graphite mode, you have this kind of cool graphite drawing of your model, which is pretty fun looking when it draws all the stuff. See, it tells me that we have a problem with that object right there because it's not being rendered correctly. So stylized color pencil, same thing, except it takes the color of the object. And so the next thing I do before I go through and show you all these, just go ahead and take a look at them yourself, actually, because they're fun to look at, and maybe even show a client, but you don't want to work in this mode necessarily. All right, so I'm going to come up. The one we haven't talked about here is realistic. All right, and so what realistic is going to do is it's going to give us that shadow, real-time shadow, and let us see how our light is interacting with our model. So if I were to select the light here and turn on manual positioning, and I move the light around, you'll notice nothing happens. Don't worry, don't panic. Everything's going to be okay. That is because 3D Max has a default light for a scene, which is why you're able to see anything when you first create your models. And we need to tell it that we don't want that light anymore. We want our sunlight. So click on that realistic shaded, whatever that says for you, and come on down here to lighting and shadows and say illuminate with scene lights. Oh, much prettier. I mean, cool looking. All right, so now our sunlight is interacting with the model and it's looking pretty good. And more importantly, I can select the sun object and I can move it around, and as I move it around, the shadow in real time will adjust its position, of course. Okay, so that is how you get the, that's how you get, okay. Panic. That is how you get real-time lighting information in the viewport. And then as you'll notice, since this is a physically accurate sun, if the sun goes down in the horizon, everything gets dark. Just like the real sun. And it goes up, everything gets brighter towards straight upsy downsy. 12 noon, right? And then as we get lower, it happens again. All right, so it's cool. All right, so let's look at some of these other viewport settings again. I'm just going to sort of center that up. And you notice it snaps into shaded mode when I'm moving around and then pops back into realistic mode. All right, so if we go to color ink, did we do that one already? Yeah. So it puts that, you know, sort of drawing look, tune shaded, cell shaded, whatever. All right, so this box is bugging the crap out of me, to be honest. And it's doing that black flashy thing because it's intersecting another mesh. And you can see the steel does it as well. And that's because they're intersecting, and it's not going to show up on the render that way, but it does show up in the viewport that way, and it's bothersome. You can change that out. I mean, it's just a box. You can redraw just a normal box in there if you want, but sometimes that's a little bit unavoidable. Stylize acrylic. Okay, I'm just going to go through these here. Pastel. Yikes. And then tech, which is you know, it's cool, man. I mean, let's face it, it's pretty cool. I don't know how cool it is when you get in here, although it looks like it's fairly cool. I don't work with this a lot. It's kind of for our purposes, it's kind of fluff. I mean, it's nice to see, and people like clients appreciate seeing it, but as far as, hey, did you spend any money on that? You know, they don't want to. You don't want to spend their money on fluff. Okay, so that is the viewport part 1. Now I'll move into part 2, and that is configuring the background. So we have a sky object, and I'm going to turn this back into realistic mode. We have this sky object, and if I render this out, I'm just going to sort of place it there, and then I'm going to press render. Never mind that. I'm going to pause it while it renders. Okay, so it just finished rendering, and we can see that there's this cool looking sky in the background. And that is a physical sky, HDRI, high range density, HDRI, high dynamic range image. So it casts light and color onto your scene as the real sky does. So when the sky is red, it bounces red light off of everything, and everything kind of turns a tint of red. And just like this blue sky is tinting our model, even though it might not be immediately apparent, that's what it's doing. So, but we want to see that in the viewport because we want to do some viewport renders, and we don't want to we don't want to be missing that sky. So in order to get that background, you need to tell Max to do it. So you press either Alt-B to bring up the viewport configuration background. You could also go to Views, Viewport Background, Configure. Or you could just go to Views, Viewport Background, Environment Background. And that way it'll show your environment background. And there's, you know, we have the horizon here and some other issues that we would need to resolve. But for the most part, we're not going to get into those right now. We'll just focus on, okay, you have the background, you have the real-time lighting. Now we want to create a viewport preview. So we don't want to do a full-blown render like we did last time, because that will take, how long did that take? That took 43 seconds. So if you come over here to Tools and say Preview, grab Viewport, capture still image, you can label it if you would like, but that'll, you know, it'll take a fairly nice viewport capture of your model, which you can use to make intermediary renders, right? Not final, but good enough to get the idea. Okay, so that is going to cover viewport for now. When I get into animation, I'm going to show you how to create a preview for an animated preview, which is pretty cool. But we're going to get into materials next, and we're going to start putting materials on all of this stuff. So stay tuned for that video. All right, thanks everybody.